He only wanted 2 minutes. It was supposed to be a quick stop, almost invisible, along a road he knew like the back of his hand. But what no one imagined was that, in that ordinary moment, a movement would begin that would cross borders and end at the doorstep of the high military command. Because there are still those who think they can humiliate someone just because of their skin color, even when that someone wears a uniform with decades of honor. And what happens when that easy target has the power to mobilize entire institutions with a single phone call? The answers aren't pleasant, but they're real. Prejudice ignores rank, and the system only wakes up when it's exposed. General Tomás Ballesteros had crossed Route 19 between Salta and Puerto del Sol countless times. He knew every curve, every deserted stretch, even the old gas pump with peeling paint that seemed forgotten by time. Nothing there surprised him. Until today, after a strange update, his military GPS, a secure and encrypted model, completely froze. Upon spotting an old iron gate and a faded sign pointing toward Santoral, 4 kilometers away, he decided to pull his car to a safe corner of the road and try restarting the system. He was dressed simply, a polo shirt and discreet shoes. His official jacket, with a general's insignia on the collar, was folded on the back seat. Nothing about him screamed authority, and he didn't think he needed to look important. He just wanted 2 minutes. But the crunch of gravel being crushed behind the car made his body tense. In the rearview mirror, he saw flashing lights without a siren. A local police car was approaching. On the side, the worn-out letters read, "Chief of Villa Zamora." The vehicle door opened, and out stepped a tall woman, blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, mirrored sunglasses, and an expression that needed no introduction. Officer Lorena Valdez didn't ask for documents or basic questions. She simply marched up to Tomás's window and knocked hard. "Good afternoon, sir. What are you doing here?" Tomás lowered the window halfway. "Just restarting my GPS, ma'am." She stepped back and scanned the inside of the car with cold eyes. "And exactly where are you going?" He looked at the name embroidered on her uniform and calmly replied, "Just correcting my route." Lorena pursed her lips and stepped back a bit. "I need you to step out of the car so I can see your GPS. You're on private property. This area is known for document forgery and other illegal activities. And, sir, you fit the profile." The profile? Lorena Valdez took 2 steps back, keeping her hand on the holster, as if waiting for him to make the wrong move. Tomás exhaled through his nose and opened the door calmly, with no sudden movements. He had faced hard stares in conflict zones, diplomatic meetings, rooms where respect was traded for assumptions. Here, on that dusty road, the officer's rigidity didn't come from duty. It was personal, something that burned from within. "I will get out," he said firmly, "but I want to make something clear. I've committed no crime." "You're being uncooperative," she replied, taking another step to the side, watching his every move. "I agree with every word you just said," he returned, still calm, but more direct. She gestured with her hand, directing him to the back of the vehicle. There was no visible police support, no body camera, just her. A radio that kept crackling, and the increasingly intense heat of the asphalt. "Place your hands on the trunk," she ordered. Tomás hesitated for a second. "Ma'am, I'm a federal officer. My ID is inside the car. With your permission, I can retrieve it." "Hands on the trunk!" she shouted, lunging aggressively. She grabbed his arm and twisted it forcefully. His palm touched the hot metal of the car. His body reacted to the impact, but he did not resist. He remained still. There was no defiance in the gesture, only composure. And then he spoke, almost in a whisper. "You're making a mistake." She didn't answer. Further ahead, a pickup truck stopped. A woman in the front seat already had her phone in hand. In the back, a young man was recording everything. The camera was fixed on Lorena, on Tomás, on the imbalance of the scene. No one intervened, but their eyes said enough. Something was wrong in that picture. Tomás's calm was unsettling. The officer's tension seemed excessive. Something was off. This story doesn't bring effects, doesn't have a dramatic soundtrack, but it carries weight. And if you feel that stories like this need to be told, help us keep going. You can support the channel through live pics or check out one of the services in the description link of this video. Your help makes a difference in keeping this content alive. A force that didn't come from protocol, but from the need to maintain control. Lorena was breathing heavily. Her chest rose and fell, not from physical effort, but from adrenaline she couldn't manage. And still, she didn't know who she was handcuffing. "I won't repeat myself," she shouted, her left hand dangerously close to her weapon. "Am I being detained?" Tomas asked, without removing his arms from the trunk. His voice was steady, unafraid. "You don't give orders here." She stepped back, trying to maintain control of the situation. "Then please call your supervisor or allow me to retrieve my ID." "You don't dictate anything," she snapped back. From the corner of his eye, Tomas saw the boy from the pickup truck step out. The phone was still recording, now more steadily. Beside him, the boy's father crossed his arms. Silence, the kind that weighs, the kind that signals something's about to happen. "I'm not resisting," said Tomas again, slower this time. "But I need to identify myself. I am General Tomas Ballesteros. My identification is inside the car, in my wallet." Lorena laughed with disdain. "And I'm supposed to believe that?" He simply replied with a firm gaze. "You don't need to believe. You just need to verify." She didn't move immediately. Then she turned and murmured into the radio. Her voice came out low, swallowed by the static of the transmission. But Tomas managed to catch the words she used. "Suspicious man, possibly armed." That made him slightly turn his head. "I'm not armed," he said without hostility. "You're military, right? You usually are, you people." She didn't answer. She continued on the radio, calling for backup. She was nervous, insecure, acting more on impulse than technique. Tomas knew that the best way to handle that kind of tension was to let it collapse on its own. Don't push, don't react, just maintain control. In the car ahead, the man who was watching now had his arms resting on the window, alert. Something in his expression had changed. Those present no longer saw just another scene. They sensed the distortion. "You're escalating something that doesn't need to be," said Tomas, still with his hands on the car. "Don't tell me how to do my job. I'm just asking you to follow protocol." Lorena stepped closer again, eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening me?" "No, ma'am. I'm warning you." She hesitated. Then she walked to his car, opened the back door, and pulled out the military wallet from the compartment. She rifled through the cards without real attention. But then, moving one of the documents aside, she saw something unexpected, a Pentagon Level 4 security card. She froze for a few seconds. "Where did you get this?" she murmured, barely audible. "I earned it through over 30 years of service." She closed the wallet and walked back to him. Not too close, but not far enough to admit a mistake. "You could have said that earlier." "I did." She looked away. "But you still can't stop here." She seemed to be searching for any excuse to get out of the situation. "Any reason to keep that tone?" Tomas asked, without raising his voice. "I wasn't even parked. I was stopped here." Lorena Valdez turned rigidly, as if only then remembering her patrol car behind him. She was calculating the situation, thinking about the cameras, what could be seen and what couldn't. "You'll have to wait here until the deputy arrives," she said. "All right. Once he gets here, I'd like to make a call." She turned again, suspicious. "To your lawyer?" "No," he replied, looking straight into her eyes. "To the Ministry of Defense." Lorena froze. She expected a game, sarcasm, but Tomas had nothing left to prove. She stayed silent for a few seconds, then opened her mouth to respond. Nothing came out. In the distance, a siren began to sound. Finally, another patrol. It would still take about 10 minutes to arrive, but something had already changed. More cars had stopped. More cell phones were raised. Each passing second was now seen by more eyes. The sound of sirens approached through the branches, but Lorena seemed to be losing control of the situation. She looked over her shoulder, uncomfortable with the small group gathered by the roadside. 3 cars. No one spoke. They just filmed. She stopped acting like a police officer and started acting like someone cornered. Tomas noticed the change in her gaze, the tension in her movements, the attempt to reaffirm an authority that was slipping away. "Turn around," she ordered. "I've already identified myself. You're still obstructing a legitimate investigation. I'm here unarmed, cooperating." She stepped forward, grabbing his arm. "Are you resisting?" He didn't move, but he didn't make it easier either. "This isn't necessary." She ignored him, twisted his arm roughly, and fastened the handcuffs. The metal tightened against his skin. A dull sound echoed from the road. The teenager with the phone stepped closer. "Everything is being filmed," said Tomas in a calm tone. "That wasn't a threat, it was a warning." "You think that's going to make a difference?" said Lorena sharply. "It always does, sooner or later." She dragged him to her car. Tomas didn't resist. He felt the firmness in her fingers, the way her body trembled, trying to stay rigid. She opened the door and pushed him inside without saying anything, without reading his rights, without explaining the reason. "You're going to regret this," said a male voice from the roadside. The man with the teenager didn't yell, didn't advance, but his tone was firm and deep. Lorena heard it but didn't respond. She just slammed the door shut and turned away. She walked to the front of the vehicle, fiddling with the radio. Her voice came out rushed, confused. Tomas was breathing deeply, locked in the back seat, hands cuffed behind him. 1, 2, 3. He was counting seconds, staying focused. He could hear her words through the radio, distorted, jumbled. She was describing him as a dangerous man, military, possibly armed. She hadn't checked any of the documents he gave her, hadn't even looked closely at the jacket folded in the back seat. The insignia was still visible on the collar, but someone saw it. The teenager stepped back, raised the phone, zoomed in on the jacket. "You filming?" the father asked. "Yes, the badge, the stars, everything." Another police car arrived. Soon after, a third, one from the army, another from the state patrol. From the military vehicle stepped out Deputy Lamar Boyd, a tall man with grey streaks at his temples and a serious expression. He didn't draw a weapon, didn't run. He walked calmly toward Lorena. She approached him with her arms crossed. Tomas watched them from a distance. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but he saw the gestures, her agitated hands, her tense body. Boyd remained calm, nodding his head. Then he turned and walked to the cruiser where Tomas was held. He opened the back door. "Sir, I need your name." "General Tomas E. Ballesteros, Army of the Republic." Boyd took a step back. "She saw your ID. She has it." "Yes." Boyd nodded. Then he gently closed the door, asking no further questions. He walked back to Lorena. The two moved a few meters away. The conversation was now more discreet, but her body said it all. Tense posture, rigid shoulders, defensive stance, like someone who realized things had gone too far. Deputy Boyd looked at the small group of spectators for a moment before turning back to Lorena Valdez. He said nothing at first, just took a deep breath, returned to the cruiser, and calmly opened the back door. "Sir," he said, looking Tomas in the eyes, "is there someone you'd like to call?" Tomas nodded. "Yes, one person." Boyd pulled out his own phone and handed it over without hesitation. It was no longer about a misunderstanding, it was about consequences. Tomas took the phone carefully. The handcuffs made the movement difficult, but his fingers didn't tremble. He knew the number by heart. He called once, twice. On the third ring, someone answered. "Major Kendall speaking. General Tomas Ballesteros. I am being unlawfully detained by local agents in Villa Zamora on Route 19. I'm in the back seat of a patrol car. I need urgent verification." There was a pause. "General Ballesteros, you are safe for now. Have your documents been verified?" "There are witnesses recording everything. The officer has not followed any protocol since the beginning. This could escalate at any moment. Understood? Keep the line open. I'll contact the Department of Defense and the military police." Seconds later, another voice took over the call. "This is Commander Reeves. We are tracking your location. Your identification has already been confirmed. Communication will be made with the local authorities in the next few minutes. Thank you, and thank you for remaining calm, sir." Tomas didn't respond. He simply handed the phone back to Boyd, who took it discreetly and stepped a few feet away to make a call of his own. "Yes, sir. That's right. Confirmed. Understood." Inside, Tomas watched through the window. Lorena stood on the other side, near her car, her face rigid, but something had changed. She was looking around more often, restless. The phones were still pointed at her, and so were the eyes. 5 minutes later, new sounds filled the road, but they weren't regular sirens. 3 black SUVs emerged from the curve, silent, with windows darker than legally allowed. These vehicles belonged to another level of authority, and they did. The first stopped in front of Lorena's patrol car, the second behind it. The doors opened almost simultaneously. 2 men in dark shirts with earpieces stepped out. Then, a military officer in uniform. It was Colonel Errol Gaines, a well-known name within the armed forces. He walked slowly, directly to Boyd, then to Lorena without diverting his eyes. When he reached the cruiser, he opened the back door himself. "Sir," he said in a composed voice, "are you all right? Physically?" "Yes," Tomas answered firmly. "But my pride is wounded. We're getting you out of here." Gaines looked at Boyd. "Who's in charge?" "I've been here 10 minutes, the congressman replied. "The officer initiated the approach." Gaines turned to Lorena. She recomposed herself, trying to maintain posture. "Do you know who this man is?" "He didn't present valid ID," she said, gesturing. "I acted on suspicion. He refused to cooperate. He gave name and rank. You withheld his identification. A 3-star general, handcuffed in the back of a car." Lorena tried to argue, but her voice trembled. "I recommend you don't say anything else," said Gaines. "This is already being reported to your department's command, the Villa Zamora Sheriff and the Joint Chiefs." She stayed silent. Her mouth opened and closed without a response. Boyd called for the sheriff over the radio, but didn't look at her again. Tomas exited the cruiser on his own. His arms were marked from the handcuffs, his skin reddened, but he showed no pain. He didn't ask for an apology, didn't complain. Some of the roadside residents approached, still recording. No one spoke. The atmosphere was one of tension, of waiting. "Sir," said Gaines, "would you like to file a formal complaint?" Tomas looked at Lorena, then at the surrounding cameras. The crowd had grown. Now everyone was watching. "Not yet," he said. "I want this to go through the proper channels, for it to be reviewed the way the system was designed." He looked again at the cell phones. "Let them see. Some lessons don't need to be shouted. They just need to be seen." The crowd along the roadside was no longer the same. What started as curiosity became documentation, and from documentation came outrage. The videos spread quickly, first among those present, then across social media. Before sunset, they were already being shared in groups, profiles and timelines, unedited and unfiltered. Officer Lorena Valdez was still near her patrol car, arms crossed so tightly that her fingers nearly disappeared into her elbows. She didn't speak. She didn't look at anyone. She was there, but seemed smaller by the second. The authority she tried to impose now trembled. The badge on her chest no longer commanded respect. It was just a piece of metal under watchful eyes. 10 minutes later, a car kicked up dust at the end of the road. A gray vehicle, no sirens, no rush. Sheriff Roger Nix stepped out slowly, broad-shouldered, freshly shaven beard, the posture of a man tired of having to keep adults in check. He stayed in the car for a few moments, just watching. What he saw was enough. When he finally got out, the surrounding noise stopped. Not even the birds broke the silence. "Can someone explain to me what the hell is going on here?" he said. The voice didn't rise, but it carried a kind of weight that made volume unnecessary. Colonel Gaines stepped forward. "Sheriff Nix, Colonel Errol Gaines, Department of Defense. One of your officers detained a federal general without legitimate cause." The sheriff's eyes went from Gaines to Tomas and finally stopped on Lorena. "Is that true, Tracy?" She opened her mouth, hesitated. He refused to cooperate. The vehicle seemed suspicious. "I followed procedure." "You followed what your training says?" he interrupted. "Did you verify the ID he gave you?" "I thought it wasn't real." The sheriff turned his head slowly. "You thought?" His eyes locked on her. "This man could have ended your career with one call, and he didn't. That should tell you something." Lorena didn't respond. She only looked away. Nix then turned to Tomas, extending a firm hand. "General Ballesteros, I apologize for what happened here on my road, in my county." Tomas shook his hand, but without enthusiasm. "I appreciate it, Sheriff, but this isn't about me. It's about what she did when she thought no one was watching." The sheriff slowly turned to the still recording cell phones. "Looks like a lot of people were watching." Gaines gave a slight nod. "We'll file an official report. Her conduct wasn't just inappropriate, it was illegal." Lorena took a step forward, as if to defend herself, but just seeing the cameras still recording made her step back. Nix remained firm. "Tracy, you're officially suspended. Hand over your weapon and your badge." She froze, her face drained of color. "Sheriff, this isn't a request." Her hands slowly went to her holster, then to her chest. When she handed everything over, he didn't even look at her, just turned to the residents. "Let the investigators do their work, but I want something to be clear. This is not how we treat anyone in this town. I don't care about rank or uniform. No one deserves to go through what this man did." A boy from the crowd stepped forward. "Sir, want me to send you the video?" Nix gave a tired smile. "It's already gotten where it needed to. But son, thank you for recording it." The boy nodded, quiet pride in his expression. Tomas walked to the car, the door still open, his hat on the seat. He sat down, adjusted his collar, straightened the stars on his shoulder. The sound of the crowd now felt distant. Lorena tried to discreetly move back toward her car, but Boyd appeared and took the keys from her hand. "No one's going anywhere until this is cleared up." The next morning, the video had already made it to national outlets. The initial clip, posted by a teenager named Miles Ryan, had become a 2-minute sequence viewed by over 2 million people in under 12 hours. The hashtags were direct: General Ballesteros, Villa Zamora, Gelas, abuse recorded. Media trucks started to gather at the entrance to Ruta 19, as if it were a crime scene. Antennas raised, lights positioned, and the entire country now knew what had happened on that road. No crime had been formally registered, at least not against the man who was handcuffed without cause. General Tomas E. Ballesteros left Villa Zamora that same night. No press, no interviews, no video statements. He made one phone call to his wife and returned silently to Fort Benning. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't incite protest. And that controlled silence gave even more strength to what had happened. The army released an official note, cold, impersonal, and carefully hollow. "We are aware of the incident involving Officer Lorena Valdez and an unidentified driver. The situation is under internal investigation." There was no mention of the fact that the unidentified driver had more command hours in international territory than any other name within the department itself. But the public knew. On the second day, small protests began to form in front of the Villa Zamora police station. They weren't in the thousands, but enough to be seen, enough for local TV news to open their broadcasts with images of veterans holding signs, photos of Tomas in uniform in combat, receiving a presidential medal. His face became a symbol, and with the symbol came the weight. Journalists began to dig into Lorena Valdez's past. 3 official complaints had been filed in the past 2 years, all silenced. 2 involved black drivers. A third came from a single mother who claimed she had been followed to her home and threatened with a note. These reports resurfaced, and this time they were being heard. Lorena remained silent. Her lawyer issued a short statement. "My client acted within protocol and according to her training. But there was no training that explained what the video showed. No regulation justified the dismissal of a federal ID presented at the start. Meanwhile, Tomas stayed focused. He didn't speak to reporters, didn't join protests. The only time he spoke publicly was during a discreet veterans forum at a local church in Columbus 3 days later. The media hadn't been invited, but someone in the audience filmed it. Tomas was sitting on a wooden bench, wearing his uniform, hands clasped. "I've faced hostility on foreign soil," he said. "I've worked under governments that didn't want me in their halls, but I never felt as small as I did on that road in Georgia." He paused and took a breath. "I don't carry anger. That doesn't build anything. What we need is accountability and honesty. You can't fix what you pretend doesn't exist." No one applauded, but everyone listened. 2 days later, Sheriff Roger Nix announced the outcome of the internal investigation. Lorena Valdez had been dismissed. Excessive force, breach of protocol, abuse of authority. But off mic, Nix said something else to a colleague. "She got caught doing what everyone already knew she was doing, and that's what should really shame us." The dismissal didn't silence the country, but it pushed something forward. Public schools began to open debates on power, discrimination, and respect. Small newspapers published editorials on authority and responsibility. Teachers began using the case as a study. The Rearan family, who filmed the video, were invited to Washington. They received a Civil Courage Award. Tomas returned to his routine at Fort Benning, but something had changed. The next time he addressed new cadets, he said just a few words. "This uniform carries honor, but there are those who only see what they want to see. Don't let that bring you down. Sometimes justice doesn't scream, it just stands tall and reminds." 3 weeks later, the protest had waned, but the conversation hadn't. The situation was discussed in schools, churches, neighborhood meetings. People didn't just repeat what they'd seen, they started to question why it still happens. How could a man who led troops for over 30 years still be treated as a suspect while presenting a high-level document? Tomas never portrayed himself as a victim. It wasn't his style. But he also didn't pretend nothing had happened. He believed in presence, in composure, in leadership that doesn't need to shout. He turned down invitations for talk shows and live interviews, but accepted one single invite to speak at a leadership conference in Tallahassee. It wasn't a military auditorium. It was a room full of teachers, first responders, and students. He stepped on stage in a simple suit, no medals, no stars, and began with a sentence. "I want to talk about restraint." It wasn't about silence, nor was it about passivity. It was about control. The kind of control that takes more strength than yelling, because when you're humiliated, when you're discredited in public, everything inside you begs for a reaction. But the weight of the uniform isn't just fabric, it's a choice. And true power doesn't reside in impact, it resides in the refusal to retaliate. You can't control how people see you, but you can control how you act when they're wrong. And it's in that choice that what really matters is born. At the back of the room, a young paramedic raised his hand. "How did you manage to stay so calm that day?" Tomas gave a slight smile. "Because my life didn't begin that day. It was built long before it. The officer who stopped me didn't know my story, but I did." Another asked if he felt anger. "I do, but I don't carry it. I use anger. When you carry it, it sinks you. But if you know how to use it, it lifts you. It gives you breath when you most need to speak." After that moment in Villa Zamora, things began to change. The city implemented a new training model for officers, not just about protocols, but about perception. Officers underwent unconscious bias training, not as punishment, but as adjustment. Sheriff Roger Nix, despite past shortcomings, brought in outside consultants, people without uniforms, but with lived experience. People who understood what it was like to be judged before speaking. Community panels were formed, voices were heard, not always peacefully, but they were heard. Lorena Valdez disappeared from the news. She moved to another city, got a job in private security. No badge, no weapon. Just a uniform with her name embroidered on the chest. Nothing more. The Rieran family returned to their routine, but Miles, the teenager with the camera, didn't stop. He created a YouTube channel and began interviewing teachers, veterans, and local residents. He spoke about justice, about character, about recognizing wrong, even when it doesn't scream. His first video was titled, "I didn't know who he was, but I knew it was wrong." In the first week, over 500,000 views. Tomas watched that video from his office at Fort Benning. He was alone. When it ended, he closed the screen and stepped outside. The sky still held a shade of orange, and the afternoon heat clung to his skin. He didn't feel proud, nor did he feel vengeful. He was just certain that keeping calm had changed everything. It wasn't the outcry that exposed the wrong. It was the posture during the wrong. It wasn't a speech nor a headline. It was the way he remained standing while others came to realize what they had done, all recorded on a phone shared by strangers. And because of that, it gained strength. Because sometimes the strongest form of protest is standing still while finally paying attention. In the end, what remains is the question: how is it still possible for this to happen? And why, even with proof in hand?